A French gentleman that I met with last night for dinner called it flamme, which I think sounds far more glamorous. But flame essentially is the future of languages as a medium for education. And what that means is that we're being encouraged by the Association of Language Learning to move away perhaps from teaching 11-year-olds who don't particularly care about what's in their pencil case or what they do in their bedroom or what their school is like, and actually try and find some much more age-appropriate learning to go on in secondary schools. So that's just a little taste, really. I think if we just go to the last one before I move on, this is called A New Approach to French. I don't know how new it was, but back in 2009, when I was still very much in the classroom, I don't know how many times by my colleagues I was called a maverick, and I think it was meant as an insult, but I always used to take it as a compliment. And I would be the one who was always trying out different new things, and piloting something or other, or having something proven away in the background. And this is where I used a project called Pi, which had been developed in Scotland. They were very much at the forefront of podcasting in the early mid-2000s. And a gentleman called Ewan McIntosh, who I'm sure some of you will know through Twitter, had worked with schools to try and get children to learn about French grammar through the medium of podcasting and almost like meditation. And so I thought, do you know what, my learners are really desperately bad at French grammar, but they've got their GCSE exams in a few weeks. I am actually prepared to try anything to drill this grammar. And so I tried using some of the materials that were developed through the Pi project. And again, I took a baseline, how are you finding that you are picking up the passé composé in French? And they said, it's really difficult and I can't quite get my head around it. But then they were also conscious that it was going to help them in their exam. I then did the Pi intervention, and we sat with our heads on the desks and we meditated and we tried to visualise the verbs. We were talking about visualisation in Jonathan's session just now. And the results afterwards were just astonishing. They really had grasped some of the grammar that I had failed miserably, at trying to get through to them. The most recent research, if you like, that I've done, which is very much based on my students at the university, I have, again, the immense privilege of working with 20-odd super keen, super talented linguists, French, German, Spanish, another click. And when I'm not working at the university, I sometimes do consultancy. So I'm working for a company at the moment called Sanico. Is this going to open, maybe? Oh, yes, here we go. This was me this time last year because I dyed my hair red, so it's slightly confusing. It is me, but it doesn't really look like me. And what I decided to do, because they approached me, was to write an article based on some research that I've done at the university about how languages teachers who don't necessarily have time or money or aren't allowed out of school, which is why today is such a big success because you haven't had to ask for permission, how can we use online tools, social media, to connect? So I was interested in Twitter, Facebook, blogging. How is that going to help my teacher trainers in the future, where actually we are in a world of not a lot of money and not a lot of time and not a lot of being allowed out of school? And so the article that I wrote, again, I would say, not just with my university head on, but it was research. I wanted to know if they actually were learning things from experienced professionals through connecting with social media. And again, the feedback from that research that I did, which was very small scale, took me a matter of minutes to put together a SurveyMonkey survey, which I sent out to them. They filled it in. SurveyMonkey did all of the background work and created the pie charts and all the things that I'm not very good at. And we had a write-up about that. The next thing I'm going to move on to is this idea of the trainees' master's level work. My husband again this morning was sort of reviewing my presentation as he does, and he said, where did you get this word from? Where did the words come from? I said, actually they're my words, because this is what I think of when I think of the work that my trainees do at master's level. They are teaching a half a timetable when they are doing this research, so they are fairly time poor as well. But during their PGC year, which is ridiculously intense 9 months, to gain 60 master's level credits, they are expected to complete 3 assignments. And the third assignment, which is by far my favourite one to mark, and marking isn't always that fun, is it? Is about MFL. And if at the end you are interested, I will share some of the titles with you. But I think my main point with this master's level research is, what's the audience for that? At the minute, the audience is me. I mark it, I give it back to them, and they go away happy that they've got 50 or more. But some of the findings from that master's level research, which might be very small classroom research, is fascinating, and it's very solution focused, because that's what I tell them they have to do. I don't want moaning and groaning and griping about lack of motivation in language learning. I want them to think of a problem, and I want them to do an intervention, and then I want them to feedback on how effective that intervention has been. So if you are interested, I'm more than happy to show you those, but we have topics like differentiation, which I think in all schools is a big issue. We've got some schools in our partnership who are looking at the use of Kagan techniques in modern languages and how to work effectively with mixed ability classes. We've got a student here at Huntington who's doing some fascinating research into language awareness modules and how maybe taking some time out of school to look at how language is formed as opposed to just constantly learning grammar and culture and vocabulary. How effective can that be? So that excites me, but my plea, if there isn't anybody in here who has that influence, is how can we get that research out there so that teachers have access to that? That would be my plea. What I'm going to do now, I'm trying to, let's have a quick look at the time. Have I got another 10 minutes? No, 15. That's good. What I'd like to do is a bit of SWOT analysis. I know we're quite a small group, so I think we can do this quite effectively in about 5 minutes. My key question, I suppose, for today, and it was going to be my title, but then I changed it, was why are many teachers scared of the R word? It's a bit like a dirty word. Amongst teachers, I personally feel my trainees dread their third M-level assignment because they don't see themselves as researchers. They see themselves as practicing teachers or trainee teachers, and they're not quite sure where to start. And when they think of research, they think of academics in a long gown and a mortarboard, and they don't think of teachers. And actually, my personal view is that teachers are the best researchers because they're at the chalk face, they're at the ground level, and they know what works. So it's not necessarily about quantitative or qualitative evidence. They might not know the terminology, they might not know about effect size, they might never have read about Petty, or they might not have had the time to read the books, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't doing active research. I think the gap is the write-up. They don't necessarily have the time or wouldn't know where to start with a write-up about what they're doing in the classroom that's actually effective. So I've highlighted strengths and opportunities in green, because obviously that's green for go, and then I've highlighted weaknesses and threats in red. So what I wanted to do, ideally, was if this side of the room, because we're fairly evenly split, if you could have a think about the weaknesses and threats. So the question again was, why are many teachers scared of the R word? And then on this side of the room, if you could have a think about the strengths and opportunities. So why are you here? Why are you interested in research? Why should, in the context of modern languages or in the context of whatever subject you teach, what are the weaknesses and threats? Why is there not more of this happening? And you're the key in Saturday morning crowd, so I probably don't need to do much convincing. But those colleagues in school who aren't here, who don't understand why you're here, who don't know the first thing about research and think that it is just for academics, what are the weaknesses and threats? And I think this is the bit that I'd rather dwell on because I want a positive outcome from today. What are the strengths and opportunities? What have we got to gain from teacher-led research? So just a couple of minutes, if that's all right. Talk to somebody you've not spoken to.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Mark.
I'm Claire.
Hi. Hi there.
I'm Simon.
Hi Simon. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
So, I don't kind of research. Does scare me because I'm a teacher. No one's ever trained me to be a researcher.
But I was actually at a session at your university last weekend, and it was a workshop between researchers, so researchers of secondary acquisition and teachers. There weren't enough teachers there, really, there were more up teachers that were there were English as a second language rather than sort of my language teachers.
And I've gone the other way, so I was very
it was quite interesting to point of view, learning about some of the research that goes
now
on
that I'm
in
involved
language
in teacher
acquisition.
training, I'm really mastered like I don't have a master's personally.
We never hear about it. It felt like they were the registers, given an example, was really interesting to talk about guidance being sort of looking
trainees who
into
have 16 level credits.
the order
that
at
it's not
which
just
pupils
something that
acquire
it's
a different
grammar.
cognitive
And
process.
so we're sort of comparing
very much
people who've learned it within the
You're
context of the
engaging
classroom
in
and those that
what you're
learned it
doing.
explicitly, like you move to America and you have to pick up English.
Yeah,
but then when you've got your
something
research
else, and you found that, for
I mean, the
example,
questions around
the
it,
order
you
at
said
which
about,
pupils
but we're not
acquire
academics. I don't
certain
think
aspects
being
of grammar
academic to be
is
writing
the
research.
same whatever
I mean,
order you
I've
do
got
it in.
PhD,
So
so
even
that
if you've
means
been
I'm
teaching
trained
the
to do
perfect
research.
tense
But I do think
earlier
there's a
than
lot there
something
that is
else, that's
important.
something else that
Otherwise,
might have been
are they
acquired
really
before
doing
the perfect
research?
tense. Because everybody's got these
Because when you say that,
kind of
well,
thought,
there's
well, why
individuals who
don't
are
we
doing
know
it,
that?
why are you just
Why,
trying things new and trying
Yeah.
to
why aren't
practice?
So you're talking about the line from research, you're talking about the ATL, you mentioned research and how it impacts on the class.
yeah.
I'm talking about actual research itself, actually understanding how to be a researcher. There's a meta language that sits behind it that I don't really know. I do know kind of teach psychology, but validity, reliability. If I say to your normal teacher,
and actually they don't really let a conversation with the language teachers come in and deal without spending a huge amount of money.
so there's quite a lot of meta language that sits behind being a researcher where I think, wait a minute.
Do you need it?
But I
Do you need
think
it?
Okay, so how would you engage in research in class if you didn't have a framework that you understood?
Taught that you go to the Mary High one before, which taught me that before. Because she I thought she was taught, I think it was quite interesting because there was a lot of ideas of how you could do it on a very small scale and sort of immediately benefit. But you need lots of analysis in a sense, did it?
No, but what framework?
Framework that you could do something
it's just a reflection, it's the reality.
Even when that's a danger because people often carry research through something and then the research is not valid.
Can I just stop you there if that's okay? Would there be somebody from each camp who would be prepared to sort of summarise in a couple of sentences what you've said? We're going to start with the negative so that we can end on the positive if that's okay. So your group, just in a couple of sentences, what would you say your main thoughts were in terms of the weaknesses and threats?
We've just mentioned teachers being very time poor, so the fact that you're overwhelmed with even the idea of reading to make sure you're grounding your research is something current, that's a big thing, isn't it? But then also you're involved in a different cognitive process when you're teaching, you've got to take a step back and be much more reflective in what you're going to do if you're going to do research. And then is that really research? Are you contributing to a wider picture? Yes, in some ways, but how do you know if you've not done reading?
Okay.
But if they
it's just if someone is preaching it, you need to read more research. You need to have time to research.
Exactly.
And you need to see the relevance.
Well, I've often thought, and there would be a huge cost implication, but what if, just what if, big, huge sky thinking, what if schools were to free up teachers for an odd day a term, in groups, maybe not even curriculum groups, to just give them that breathing space to go and read the things that they don't have the time to read, or to go and develop those resources that they don't have the time to develop. So, I don't know that that is necessarily a possibility, but I think if we could just remove any barriers to doing whatever would make a big impact, I think that would have a huge impact.
I think there are common issues with teachers' concept of professional identity. It's what I do my master's research on. And often ask a lot of teachers to articulate why they are professionals, they will not mention research being driven practice.
Okay.
As in that they say things.
And yet when you meet researchers,
how they teach students, but they're not linking back to their research.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
One day we had that was very successful last year was to have groups reading some stuff that they were working on anyway, so they were part of a learning group, if you like. And then immediately after that they had time in partners, plan, try and disseminate.
But time costs money, doesn't it?
But also to plan things together, to discuss things at work in the night or what they read in the morning. That was definitely a good day.
Okay, and on the positive side, any gems, pearls of wisdom, Cherry? Because I know you.
We kind of sort of.
Yeah, if you went off topic, that's what people do, don't they?
Because I was sort of thinking about the talk that I just went up with Mary Hyman was speaking about the possibility of sort of micro research, that you can do things within the context of your daily teaching. We were concerned about whether that would be valid if you're doing some kind